This is Behind Closed Deals.
We'll be chatting with multifamily maestros,
Uncovering their strategies,
and unraveling the latest market happenings.
bringing you intel you can't buy.
Welcome, everybody, to our Behind Closed Deals podcast. You've got George Tickajohn and Cameron Benz today, and we have as our guests Michael James and Dan Gable of JG2. Very good long-term clients of ours, so we're very excited to share with our audience their insights and background. And I'll start with a quick story. I first met Michael in, I think it was 2005 or 6, I think 2004. And Michael was new to Indiana, and I had some properties for sale. Michael wanted to look at them as a buyer. And up until I met Michael, my impression of Californians, which is where Michael is from, was they don't know anything about apartments because apartments in California always stay full and you always raise rents year after year. You don't have to worry about maintenance, vacancy, collecting rent. It's just values just go up in California. So Michael's the first California buyer that I met who actually cared about all those things because he knew that running apartments was not just buying and sitting on it and it tripling in value year after year. So Michael changed my opinion of some of the Californian buyers. So Michael, why don't you and Dan give us your origin story? And Michael, tell us what brought you to Indiana in 2004.
Oh, great. I guess before I tell you what brought me out, to finish your story, George, I think it goes both ways. We came out and met a few brokers in the area back in 2004, start of 2005. And George, you were the only broker that took enough time and enough interviewing time to get to know me a little bit and to understand the process that I had gone through already in California. Nobody else really asked for that story to find out, am I just a regular California buyer that wants to buy a property too and sit on it? Or do I want to start a business of buying, selling, owning, managing, rehabbing projects in the Midwest? And he did a great job of, figuring that out. And it ended up that we did, I think, quite a bit of business together compared to the other brokers in the area. And I'm pretty thankful for that. Hope you are. And it's been a great relationship.
Yeah.
Certainly brought me to the Midwest and really Indiana. My two associates that worked under me in California, we had been buying, selling apartments in the Sacramento, Vallejo, all the way down the 5 corridor in California, down into Fresno, Bakersfield, Hanford area, and doing quite a bit of business. And we started researching different parts of the country. And the reason we did that research, looking for different demographics and different price point markets, was that California had gone through quite a bit of transformation, had gone through a price point that I started getting a little worried about, and decided that I didn't want to go through 2 or 3 years of a down market in California when I might be able to find a market to settle in. And originally, my thought was to go to this place that we would find, buy some inventory after selling what we had in California, then after the downturn coming back to California again. That was my original thought process. I've got to tell you, we ended up, I won't go through everything and all the work we did that placed us in Indiana, but out of the whole United States, Minneapolis and Indianapolis were the last 2 places on our list that made the most sense to come from California and make that trade out. After studying the Minnesota market and the Indiana market, it was very easy to see that one, Indiana had some great plans. They had a new 20-year plan in Indiana that at the time had a rail system, which has never happened, but they also had plans for the new stadium, a lot more convention space. There's a lot of growth happening, and it was the lowest price point in the United States at the time. So we thought, our California dollars would go a lot further in Indiana than it would in the Minneapolis area. And at the same time, we thought it just had so much more growth left in it. And we had seen that growth in California. And when you've seen it and you've seen different areas grow together, like to give you an example, you look at Indianapolis and then you look at the outliers like Fishers, Noblesville, Westfield. But then you go beyond that to an Anderson, to a Muncie, go out the other direction towards Lafayette. And you have these cities that are, let's just say, on average, 20 miles outside the loop. In California, that's not far at all because we know those areas grow from within the outside area, and then Indianapolis, Fishers grows. And within a 5-6 year period, you have these growing together, and people just don't have the insight sometimes to see how that goes. But when you've seen it happen, you understand it. And that's why when I got here, I decided, hey, I'm going to buy in Lafayette. Outside of Indianapolis here, I'm going to buy in Anderson or Muncie. And people thought I was crazy. And you think people in California thought I was crazy to go to Indiana. Then I come here and the Indiana people think I'm crazy to go to Anderson and outside. So that's kind of the story of, the reason why, though, was generally to not hit a California crash. The second piece of this is that, George, we showed up here, and where I thought I was going to be here for a year or two, I run into people like you. They're great Indiana people. And the change from California was so it was so big that I went home and got my wife and made her travel out here with me. And we both just found that Indiana was where we should be. And all thoughts of leaving just went away.
Michael, can I add a footnote or an amendment to what brought you to Indiana? And maybe the real reason that Indiana made it on your list? I know that in addition to real estate, you were also a drag racing aficionado.
No.
And Raceway Park here in Indianapolis is the drag racing capital of the country. So you and was it Big Daddy Don Garlitz, or I forget the other guy who you worked with? That's really what brought you out here, right?
Yeah. So, boy, now we're going back. So yeah, back in the early to mid 70s, Don Garlitz, myself, and maybe two other gentlemen started Racers for Christ out at the drag strip so that guys would have a place to go to church on Sundays when we're at the drag strip all weekend. Footnote, took my son out to the drag races here about 3 years ago. And sure enough, Racers for Christ signs were up and it's still there. So I'm really happy about that.
That's great.
But to back up, yeah, we raced more locally in California for a while at different levels, and then got into top fuel racing and started racing regional. And then I got hooked up with what was called the Carpetbagger. It's an all black car that Dennis Baca was the driver. I was one of the crew chiefs, and We won Indianapolis here, and it's either 78 or 79. And so I was here earlier in my lifetime, and I didn't get to see a lot of Indianapolis at that time, but it felt good to be back here. And there's a lot of guys that I know that race that have their home out here. So yeah, so just as a side note, that made it a little more comfortable.
Good, good. All right, Cam, I think Dan's getting bored. Time for Dan to just
That's right. That's right. All right, Dan, we want to hear about or how you got into real estate and then into the ownership side as well.
Yeah, so real estate has been a big part of my life for the last 10 plus years. I, graduated from college in 2007, which is a really bad time to graduate from college. And so I ended up starting a landscaping company. And that's where I got kind of the bug for owning a company and being entrepreneurial. And sold that company and went back to school, got my MBA, my master's. And while I was doing that, I worked for a small commercial development company locally based here. I did everything from picking up garbage off of the side of the street to lease abstracts and uh, just learning the nitty gritty of the business. Uh, I was really drawn to the financial side of things and was fortunate to get a job at CBRE, sitting, essentially in the seat that you all sit in today, only on the debt and finance side of things. Um, and that was a great entrepreneurial way for me to be involved in mortgage banking. That's how I ended up meeting Michael, well over 10 years ago. And, um, as we've talked in this industry, you get to meet a lot of people and you get to see how people do things differently. Some people are fun to work with and some people are not fun to work with. Michael is one of the fun to work with people, and I've really enjoyed working with him over the last 10 years. And when Michael approached me uh, asking if I'd come to be a part of this company, um, I hesitated for about 3 seconds, and then I said, "Let's figure out how we can make that work." So, um, being on the principal side of things to me is a culmination of just my drive for entrepreneurialism and my desire to be an owner. And so I think a good fit with Michael starting to kind of step back a little bit and wanting to take a little more time with family, and then me wanting to broaden my knowledge of real estate beyond just finance, beyond just the debt side of things. So I joined in August of 22, and yeah, it's been great.
Been awesome.
Good, good. And so you guys have made a lot of changes from James Management to JG2 and over the last few years. So we just wanted to understand, what the changes are today, what the goals are today, what's your strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, so we changed the name away from James Management because we wanted the market to understand that we're more than just a management company, that we're an investment company and a real estate company as well. So that was the idea, to further simplify, maybe further complicate things. We just updated the brand. So we're no longer JG2, we're now J+G Companies. We found that the two made it confusing for people. Is it two? Is it squared? What is it? So we just dropped the two and it's just J&G Companies. So we've told people no more name changes from here on out. That's it. So
did you
I
say
mean, we're confused.
yeah,
J&G or JG Companies?
J&G Companies.
So you heard it here first, folks, on the Behind Closed Deals podcast. Late breaking news.
Yeah, so the J&G Companies has been there since JG2 came along. We use JG2 as a brand. But like you said, it was a little confusing. And we really did like the J&G Companies, which J&G Companies houses several different businesses under that parent company. And it allows us to grow into different areas and keep them all under J&G Companies as we grow different branches of the company. So we decided, why don't we go back and pick up the original name? We are J&G Capital LLC under J+G Companies. And so now under that, we'll grow separate pieces of the business.
So tell us what your current business strategy is, investment strategy. You mentioned several companies. So tell us everything you've got your fingers in.
Why don't I start with what we did?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to let Dan expound on kind of where we're headed from that. So basically, when I first got out here and met you, George, I bought and sold multifamily property. We did a lot of restoration, a lot of workforce housing. And because of the move from California to Indiana and not having the contacts, the third parties you need to be a management company, we had outside management for a few years. As soon as we could grow into our own management team, we did that. And that, I think, evolved over a few years so that we became a management company. We were part-time brokers of property, buying and selling on the smaller side. And then on the larger side, purchasing properties from you and some of your competitors. We started getting into then full rehab, full management, and full, buying and selling of property. So we had kind of three branches that, we used as money sources. And that's gone well for quite some time. We basically worked in the workforce housing side of things before guys thought that was real sexy. And then all of a sudden, after 2014, 15, a lot of people thought, wow, that workforce housing and all that rehab and the rents going up looks pretty good to me. So we had two people join us in that arena. So from that point on, we've grown a little bit, and I'll let Dan tell you now a little bit about what we've added on and what we're doing.
Yeah. So as we've grown and will continue to grow, we've added different lines of business. And one of those is our fee management business. And so as we continue to evaluate, gaps in the marketplace, one of the things we noticed was good quality fee management services. And so we have some partnerships where we'll fee manage or assist in fee management for portfolios from small to large. And the goal there is to really broaden our relationships and provide more recurring source of revenue for the company. It's a great way for us to learn more about what's going on in different markets that we're involved in already, and a great way for us to keep our finger on the pulse of the labor market. As we know, in the management world, labor is everything. People are everything, and so it's really important that we can kind of see what the various trends are out there. We also find that we learn a ton from other companies. So just having that open mindset to always be learning is really important. A big way for us to impact the growth of our business going forward. So we have a big 5-year plan that we've put together that contemplates some very large growth for us. Right now, we own and manage 3,500 units, and we'd like that number to be 8,000 by the end of, 29. So we're pretty excited about that. It's going to require us to continue to grow staffing wise, and one of the things that Michael and I did when we sat down to kind of come up with this plan was, what do we want to do? What do we want to be? And I think both of us come from a place where we're pretty honored to be able to have an impact on people, whether it be people in the brokerage community, our residents, or our employees or our investors. We we're in this business, and we get to really change people's lives, whether they are investors or residents or employees. And so we said, what better way to make sure we're doing that than to continue the growth of this company on a trajectory where we can sustain that. So
I want to piggyback on what Dan's saying. About 2 months ago, I was out in California. I hadn't been out there for quite a while, but I had wanted to go back and see some of our original investors that came out here to Indiana with us. And so we had took over a restaurant out in Berkeley, California, just to get them all in and see them. And my night was devastating in the sense that, in a good way. My night was filled with people coming up to us and talking about, do you know that I'm retired now and I would have never retired without you guys? And other people coming up and saying, we have 5 kids, and do you know that we're retired now and that you put all of our kids through college? And one story after another like that. And when day to day you're working with budgets and financing and all the stuff to make this happen for people, and you miss this number or you miss this occupancy, or you're always feeling good or bad about what you're doing, you don't get those long-term stories where somebody said that over the average of all this, you did all this. And that night was high impact for me because it really brought me back to why I started doing this. And we can still do that on a large scale. And I'm really excited about some of the other things we're doing. So tell them a little bit about, I guess, our new partnership. And
yeah, so I mean, Michael and I are co-owners of J+G, and with the growth and goals that we have in mind, we've got a long way to go. But like Michael said, it's really about the people and the impact that we get to have on everyone we touch, right? So real estate is a contact sport, and it's it's great to be surrounded by people who care, like Michael, and care about all the stakeholders in a deal, right? I think it can be very easy for us to look at a deal and say, there's only investors, and investors are in a zero-sum game, and that's just not true. The goal of a deal is to impact as many people as possible positively, and that's residents, investors, clients, vendors, employees. And so, just having the opportunity and having the shared mindset of that is really important. And I think gonna really help us kind of launch the company forward.
the other piece, go ahead, George. The second piece of that, George, is that on our growth path, Dan and I own 50% of what's the Sullivan Group, which we started 2 years ago with John Sullivan. And we felt that we needed a branch, we needed a part of our business that did Section 42 build outs. And John Sullivan is one of the best in the business. I think he's done to fruition around 62 projects. And John's also a young guy like Dan, with younger kids that are busy in the area. And he came to us and he said, I need to see my kids. I want to see the Little League games, and I want to coach my son's Little League team, and I want to be involved with my family. But in the business I'm in, I can't do it. So we decided that through J&G, we could come in and support him from the admin side, from the financial side, and budgeting, insurance, all the different things that take so much time to just stay after day to day. And we would do that and let John be good at what John's good at, which is seek out, find, and win Section 42 deals in several different states. And it's taken 2 years for that to get off the ground, but they're coming in now. We're starting to win deals. And because John's so good at it, we're not only doing our own deals, but we're starting to get involved in many other projects where people here in Indiana won projects over the last year, and they really are not at that point that they have all the tools that they need to get that done. And they've hired us to help finish those projects. And so we're becoming very busy with that piece, and we see that being a big piece of our business moving forward. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, John Sullivan's another guy you should have on the podcast here.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, very interesting guy to talk to.
So tell us about the last property you purchased, and how do you know when a deal is good enough to buy? What is your decision-making criteria there?
Well, I will tell you about the last deal we bought. We closed on a small deal, 50 units outside of Muncie in Yorktown, a few weeks ago. And it was a listed deal, but owner was out of California. And we saw a lot of opportunity to put our spin on things from an operation standpoint and a renovation standpoint. And so we were able to get that deal done, which we're excited about. I think deals that work for us are going to be deals that offer good returns and where we can use kind of our unique skill set to be successful at. So I think it's probably the answer you get from a lot of people, I guess, but that's really the fact is that it has to work on paper, and then it has to work from what we can do for it and what spin we can put on it. So
I think the way that I can say that would be, and to answer your second part of your question, George, is that when we look at a property, we want to see that it has a management play. So you guys as brokers present to us a property that has a certain set of numbers for a certain amount of time. And we do our homework on that. And then we look at mostly who did that work, who was involved, who was the ownership, who was the management, how long have they owned it, what did they do with the property, what's possible in that marketplace. And then we make some honest decisions on what does our management team look like compared to their management team? What are our capabilities compared to their capabilities? And then we look at it from a restoration or rehab play. Does it have room to do that? And by room, for our audience, I would say, do we have enough people that live in that building? And we talk about wallet shares and things like that, but to break it down, do I have enough people on that rent roll that I can get at least between 1/3 and 2/3 of that rent roll to pay better rent for a better apartment? And if they will, that's a big checkoff mark for us. Can we manage the building better than the managers that are there and the ownership that's there? That's a checkoff. And then it strictly goes to wallet share. Can the people afford to do it? And if they can, that's a play for us, and we're going to do everything we can to purchase it. The last piece of that is that we look at exit strategies right away. Once we get those numbers in place, we go right to exit strategy. And does it have an exit strategy that makes any sense at all? And if that piece comes in, that's a real bonus. Sometimes we'll take it without a great exit strategy for cash flow purposes, management purposes, all of those different things. But the exit strategy gives us that bonus, that kind of home run that you'd like to have when you buy a property like that.
So how do you know when it's time to execute on the exit strategy?
That's a constant conversation. So, I mean, there are deals that we, yeah,
Excuse me. I just want to clarify for the audience, there are a lot of properties you've owned for many, many years. So it's most of the properties you buy, do your upgrades, and you hang on to for a while. You may sell some, but most you hang on to. So question is, when do you know it's time to let it go?
well, it's a great question. And one of the things that we've done in the past is we'll recapitalize some of these assets that we've held for a long time, and that provides a um, transfer of risk from one investment group to another. And when we do that, we capitalize on what we've pushed the property to. That first group of investors gets to realize that gain and then 1031 into something else, take their basis and change it. And we do that when there's enough, what we perceive, there's another hit on that deal, whether it needs another round of renovation or it just needs a different capital infusion. And we've done that on a few transactions. We do prefer to own our deals and hold them. If we're selling a property, it's strategic for us, whether it's a location or uh, you know, really realizing a gain. And we believe that those dollars can be invested better elsewhere. So it's deal by deal. We don't have a 3-year formula or any formula for exit. We look at all assets on an annual basis and determine what's the best next move for that asset, whether it's a refinance, recapitalization, or a sale.
So two follow-up questions here, then I'll let Cam ask a question. So when you're recapitalizing, you're bringing in new investors. So question number one is, how do you value the property from group one to group two since it's not put on the market? And then secondly, do you structure all your partnerships as tenants in common so that some can trade into the new property and some can cash out? Everybody doesn't have to do it all at once.
I'll let Michael answer that one.
I'll take that. Yeah. So I guess the first part of the answer to the first question you asked a bit ago and this question, when we look at a property and kind of find that it's reached its peak in regards to we've had a rehab play, a management play, we've raised the rents. We're starting to get to a point where we've owned the property now somewhere between 4 and 7 years, and it's getting tired again and needs some work. It really depends first on who the investor in the property is. If the ownership of the property has deep pockets and can afford another investment into the property, we would then tend to let that group still bring more money into the deal, rehab the property again, and keep going. Most of my investors from California are smaller investors, not deep pockets. And when I tell you that night that a lot of people came up and said, "You put my kids through college," they didn't have another 500,000 or 1,000,000 or whatever to play with or to send us or to do things with. So in a lot of these cases, the money we're making them on these deals is their money. So in that case, you've got a property that's kind of run its length, but we know that with a rehab, it's got more years left in it. So what we have to do is we've got to do our homework and find out, what is this property worth today out on the marketplace? If I was to give it to you guys at CB and you were to put it on the market, what would you put it on the market for? We do that internally, and then we go to 3 brokers and get price opinions always from you and 2 other competitors, and find out what you guys would price this property at. And then we look at our internals and make a decision on what should be the trade price for this that makes this a very fair deal for the people that are exiting the property. And then once we take care of them, we have a fiduciary duty to the people that are exiting the property, period. That's it. It has to be right. It has to be a good sale for them. Once we've accomplished that, we look at the other side of the deal and say, okay, if they've made their sale and it's this price, if this property's rehabbed and brought back into the mix, can they make money? Is it a decent cash flow deal? And down the road, will they make money on this deal? That's part number 2. It sounds simple, but there's a lot of pieces to that. Piece number 3, you got to go back to the original group and look at what's out in the marketplace for them to buy. They're trading out of a property that's still got some potential if they had the money to put into it. So now we look at a group of people, and I'll just make up a dollar amount. Let's say that the whole investor group has brought $5 million into a property, and it's a $15 million property, and they exit the property with 7.5 or 8 or 9 million. Now they're taking, instead of 5 million that's working at a certain percentage, now they've got 9 million that's working at a certain percentage in a new property. What is that cash flow on the new property? And what's the exit strategy on the new property that they may look at 4 to 5 years down the line? If I can take the group that's coming out and put them in a way better position coming out of that property than where they are in it, and a new group can come into the old property and prosper there, it's a home run. And that's the only time that we will do that type of a retrade. Hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing we wanted to ask you guys is, we hear today, comparatively to a few years ago, that it's a lot harder to raise equity. And so what has been your experience on the new deals that you guys have done, recap or the property you bought in Muncie? Was it a lot tougher? What was it like?
Yeah, I think it has been difficult to raise equity in the last year and a half, 2 years. I think just everybody, expectations are everything, right? And so for a lot of people, we can deliver good returns, but the noise in the market may create enough anxiety where they say, I'm not so sure. The other problem that we've seen as well in raising capital over the last year or so has been, hey, we're invested with a lot of syndicators, or a group of syndicators, and our investments with those syndicators in Texas, or the Southeast aren't doing so well. We're getting capital calls. So we appreciate that you have a strong track record, and we appreciate that, you've done everything you said you would do for our investments. And we appreciate that you're in the Midwest and yada, 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 but we just don't feel comfortable doubling down on real estate in general. So I think that risk off sentiment has been challenging. But, we've had, 2 pretty decent years of raising new capital to buy new deals. And what we've had to do to do that is find deals that offer really good yield. So, it's been at the beginning of the year, I think we would have said we want to buy properties that have 200 units and more. Well, that's great, but those deals don't provide the cash on cash yield that we need right now. So what we've had to do is find deals that are 50 units or 100 units in outside markets that meet all of our criteria, but also provide a generous yield, right? And so, and cash on cash day one. That's the other kind of common response we get from our investor base is like, yeah, we've done some really good deals, we've made some really good money, but now we're a little older and we want the cash flow. So, yeah, that's great that we can get a 18 IRR, but we'd really much rather just have an A cash on cash. So if we can't get an A cash on cash in year one, then we're not that excited. So I think it's sentiment and then just counting the phones, always, generating new relationships. And we've got a great team here that works really hard at that. Jerry Goodrow on our team has done an awesome job raising capital for us. And, having a good, strong track record really, really helps.
Right.
Yeah. I think the other thing, Cam and George, is that we've got a couple of JV partners that we've done some business with. And up to this point, we've been blessed enough to hit some home runs with those folks. And although they're sitting on the sidelines for the last, let's say, year and a half, almost 2 years, I think they're getting ready to come back into the marketplace. And where they haven't had home runs with a lot of other partners that we hear about, we do have a good track record with them. So they're still in our pocket and still ready to go. We've, I think, done an excellent job over the last 2 years of buying smaller projects and getting the returns that our current clients need to get them through this time, and grown our staff, grown the company. We've done things like one of our one of our board members is a gentleman that has a lot of business background. It's one of the major factors in building the whole company, Jacuzzi. And he's come in and helped us with the financing and accounting side to where right now we're heading towards getting our financials from our properties out between the 5th and 10th of the month, which is unheard of in this business. But he has those techniques, and we're putting those in place right now. And it's just, we have to be better at what we do. And we've spent this last 2 years getting better at what we're doing, putting better people in each place in our company so that we're ready for this wave that I think will come now as the market changes and as the country changes. I think we're poised and ready for that growth, and we're pretty excited about it.
Awesome. So you've got pretty aggressive goals to grow 6,500 units in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So how do you anticipate doing that? How do you think the market is going to change, or how are you going to change to buy more fast?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's something that keeps me up at night every night. It really is coming back to basics, right? It's about people and relationships, and one of our big focuses is going to be and need to be on raising money. So we need to be out there. You will start to see a difference in how we position ourselves online. With earned media, podcasts, things like that. We're still going to be who we are, but one of the things that we've been told, some of our feedback from the board is, "Hey, you guys have a fantastic story that you haven't told anyone. So, but tell your story." So we appreciate
How long getting that? Yes.
yeah, we really appreciate the opportunity to be here and search for, and this is part of that, right? It's part of growing. It's been kind of a well-kept secret, a 25-year track record, fantastic returns, stable employment base, and just some good guys that really grind. So, telling that story, and like Michael said, we spent the last year kind of retooling the company so that as the growth comes, we can manage it. So It's that, it's relationships, and it's raising equity.
I think the other piece of that, guys, is that we've got the Sullivan piece, which is going to put more units out there. We will run those properties with a new certified person for the first 6 months to a year. But as first year's over, we'll be taking those properties over and managing those where they're at. Those will be in either different states, different areas of Indiana. Um, we are getting people certified to do that. Those areas will be areas of growth for us. So wherever we go and build a Section 42 low-income housing build out, the land that we buy at that time or surrounding, we'll be looking to put more multifamily in that area. We'll be looking to pick up fee management or buy other properties in those areas. And those will be areas that we want to grow into and at some point have a region around that. So that's one of our plans. The second is, um, George, I think you kind of know this about me from all the years, but I started here basically buying in 2005, and here we are in 24, almost 25. So 20 years later, and we're only 2 years into fee management growth. And it took that long of managing properties and getting better and better at it before I would tell my team, yes, I will now let you go out and fee manage. Because when I saw the fee management industry as a whole, you've got a base of companies that have a lot of their own units. And when you've got a ton of your own units, it's really hard to own that and to secondly look after a lot of other units. And there's some people that are very good at it. There's some that are not so good at it. And I made sure that when we start and we get through it, we're going to be one of the companies that are good at it. We're going to take care of people. We're going to report to owners. We're going to tell them the truth. And they don't hear that all the time, but we tell the truth. If there's a problem with the property, we're going to tell them what the problem is. And we're already going to have a cure ready in place and already working on it. So now that fee management piece will be part of our growth, because not only will we put fee management into the fold, but we'll grow off that fee management like Dan was talking about. So if that's in Louisville, if it's in Cincinnati, wherever it's at, we'll grow those areas around our fee management. So if we're fee managing 2 buildings that are 200, 300, 400 units in Cincinnati, we're also going to buy stuff, which we have, to go around that. And I feel that that will be a big part of our growth. To do that, we're working very hard on what it takes to raise money. Podcasts, getting visual, telling our story, but also having somebody in place in the company that knows how to raise money, that has contacts, and is continually out there raising money so that we're ready to buy properties. We didn't have that piece in the past, but we're going to have that piece in place for this market that's coming at us now.
Okay. I have a question that you can help us. How do you underwrite when you buy, let's say, a 50-unit property in Muncie? How do you underwrite payroll for small deals? We have a tough time as brokers underwriting payroll for small properties. How do you manage those properties, especially if you don't have another larger property nearby, either owned or fee managed?
That's the key.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We wouldn't buy a 50-unit property if we didn't have boots on the ground nearby. So that's the trick. We have to be efficient with our staffing. Staffing costs have increased a lot over the last several years, and insurance costs have done the same, and taxes, and all of that working against the profitability of these investments. And so really the best way to do it is to find deals that complement what you already have. Um,
Cam, I'm going to ask one more question, and you can ask another question. But what is the toughest deal you've done? And I'll point this to Michael since he's done a few more than you, Dan. Yes, the toughest deal, and why?
I want to see if I can guess it, but I'm going to let him go first.
Well, I think I can guess it, but I'm not sure.
The toughest deal. Well, there's some short-term ones that were a lot of work. Trying to think of on the west side there. The name of it's not on my fingertips right now.
But the old protocol.
Thank you. So, you can edit this. So, well, I'd say the toughest short-term deal was protocol. And 610 units at the time that also had around, I don't know, 15 to 17 units that had been sold as condos. And so they added a little wrinkle to the whole deal. The whole place needed to be rehab. I had a partner who was a great guy.
Sometimes.
And but we couldn't see eye to eye on how the property should be managed. And those are things that, I look at that as a learning experience in the sense that you've got to know who you're in business with. You've got to know what their goals are. And what I really look at is back at the time when I did that deal, I should have interviewed my partner like you interviewed me. And I mean that because I would have had more detail into what they wanted out of that deal. And since that didn't align, that made doing the deal a lot harder. Now, although we did a lot of work on the property and sold it for a profit, it was very tough. It was very dangerous. And I remember when I sold that, saying that I'll never put my employees or my people in this position ever again, and I never have. But it was a tough deal. Long term, Georgetown South. Georgetown South was a good property for most of the time we owned it. Good cash flow, good results. Very tough to manage, very tough to take care of the people, very tough to manage the neighborhood. And so that over a long period of time was just, for instance, we had air conditioning units in the attic that you could fry eggs on. And you're expecting in the summertime, one of your maintenance guys to go up in there and repair something. And the guy's almost taking his life into his own hands with the amount of heat up there. It's dangerous. And those are the kind of things you learn over a period of time that, you know what, sometimes a profit for your investor doesn't equal what you're going to have to put your employee through. So when Dan talks about us taking care of our employees and our investors and the tenants, you now average all that out and say, okay, how can we do all three? And in a property like Georgetown, you can't, so you stay away from them. So yeah, those would be my two toughest ones.
Great. Thank you. Kim, you want to end on a high note? The opposite of my question?
That's exactly what I was thinking. What is the golden goose? What's the case study, the go-to case study or best property that you guys have done?
You care with me doing these? I got to you.
Yeah.
So I've got the same thing, short term and long term. So the name of the property up north that is
Fort Wayne?
in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, Parkview.
So short term, Parkview in Fort Wayne, 352 units.
390.
So 398.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. 398 units. Christine, you're going to have to edit that. Needed full rehab, needed streets, gutters, sewer. I can't even imagine what it didn't need. And I was blessed enough to know who the owner was and a little bit about what he was and who he was and why he had the building. And it was very unique. And I also knew his agent from Sacramento, California, and had a decent relationship with him, who could get through to this guy and get our offer to him. And this is a property that at 388 units, I purchased for $5 million, with the seller carrying back $2.5 million. And we proceeded to do an $8 million rehab. And we owned the property for maybe 2 years.
Easy 2 years.
Maybe at the longest 2 years. And sold the property for almost 20 million. And was a home run. So short term, Parkview was great. Long term, there's no doubt in my mind that a property that I was going to sell to a longtime partner of mine, and it was 16, 17 years ago. And he said, "Nah, I don't like the property. I'm not sure about the numbers." And I said, No, this is a good deal. I love it." And he said, "No, I won't buy it." So I bought it, and it was called Village Square. And since 2007, when I bought Village Square, it's pumped out more cash flow, gone through 2 trades. I bought it originally for $5 million. It's worth $21 million now. Cash flow has probably averaged 10 to 13% almost the whole time we've had it for all the groups that have been there. And had the least amount of trouble.
Yeah, the same manager who's been there all that time?
We've had 2 long-term managers there that did a great job. One that helped out from Georgetown, and then one of the original ones that stayed on with us. I feel our company's been good at taking, when we buy a property, we've been able to take kind of the cream of the crop from the group that's in the property and interview them, work with them for a little bit. And we try not to change over right away. We want to know what they know about the property and what they see in it. What are the possibilities? And I've had both spectrums, people that think the property has absolutely nothing left in it. They've just been beaten down over time, either by their owner or the tenants. And then I've had some that are very optimistic, but we like to hear what they have to say. And then we use our numbers and all of that. But we've had 2 good managers, and I'd have to go back and say there was one constant with that property. And I don't want to leave anybody else out because there's other people involved, but there's one person involved with that property named Victor Colt. At one point, he was regional manager of the year in Indiana, but he's been with that property in Georgetown for the last 30 years. He's an amazing guy with a lot of knowledge, a lot of management skill. marketing skills, all of it. He's got it all. And I think that was really the cog that made that property so successful. Those are the
Awesome.
two best deals.
Awesome. Well, Michael and Dan, thanks so much for sharing your time and your history with us. And our whole team here at GB look forward to helping you hit your goals in 5 years. We'll do what we can to bring good deals to buy and send management opportunities to you. Thank you.
Yeah, we look.
And I have appreciated my long-term relationship with you, Michael, and Dan, known you for a number of years too. So I've appreciated our relationship and really think quite a bit about you.
It's
Quite
good.
of you guys. Yeah.
It's special. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, George. Appreciate everything that means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining. And so, as we say at the end of all our podcasts, you're only as good as your next deal. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay in the loop by hitting that subscribe button and check the show notes for additional resources.